In the last episode, we looked at the user interface of the Oudie and SeeYou Navigator, where everything is, how it all works, and now we have to look at the airspace and waypoint files. There are three steps essentially that we have to go over. That's getting the files, then getting those files onto the Oudie and finally selecting the correct stuff. Because the Oudie is essentially an Android phone, there's not really a correct way of doing things, and everything has several different options. But I'll give you the gist of how it all works and show you my preferences, and we'll go from there. With that out of the way, we need to first look at getting the files, and this is where we run into our first and probably biggest conundrum, and that's I don't know where you are, but if you are in the UK, you can get the files from navboys.com, and you'll see we have a software and download section. And in downloads, you can then see we've got an airspace and turn point section, and here you can download the files. If you're not in the UK, you're going to have to figure this bit out on your own, or speak to somebody from your gliding club, because somebody will know where to get airspace and waypoint files for your country. Now that you have your files, you need to make sure they are extracted, because neither your phone nor the Oudie will be able to read the files unless they are. Once you have them extracted, we can then talk about getting them onto the Oudie, where we come across another slight issue, a potential issue. macOS doesn't like Android, and as I mentioned, the Oudie is an Android device at heart. So there are workarounds, there's different apps you can use to move the files around, but essentially those two don't like playing ball, and the easiest thing to do is either have a Windows or a Linux machine to move the files around. With that in mind, let's look at the Oudie itself, and down the bottom here you can see you've got files, and here you can see the entire internal file structure of the Oudie. It doesn't matter where you put the files, as long as you know where you've put them. I put them in downloads because I just find that the easiest, and you can see in here I have some files already. You could, if you really wanted to, even create your own folder using this button here, call it Airspace and Waypoints, and put all your files here. Now you might be thinking,
Dorian, you haven't actually shown us how to get the files onto the Oudie.
and that's because your methodology doesn't matter, as long as you know where you've put the files. This is a computer, so you could use a cable that came with it, plug it into your PC, plug it into the Oudie, and just drag and drop the files over. You could use any number of cloud storage providers and upload the files there and then download them as soon as you have an internet connection. You could email it to yourself if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. And the reason I use downloads is because if I email it to myself, or if I use Google Drive, for instance, once I download the files, they will show up in downloads. So, as I said, I use Google Drive. If we go into the browser, you can now see my Google Drive. Well, you can't see any of it because it's going to be blurred, but you will be able to see this folder here, which says Oudie Files. And in here is where the files that I just shown you are. All I have to do now is download the airspace files, download the turn point files, and we can finally get on with installing them. With the files downloaded, open SeeYou Navigator and go into settings if you aren't there already, and now you can see active collections and airspace. In active collections, you can then add a waypoint file, and you can see it already opened on downloads for me. I can now just select the waypoint file, which is the top one, and here it is with a green tick next to it. I can now turn on and turn off these files. If you've got multiple waypoints, for instance, you have your own home club waypoints, or you have the generic BJA waypoints, or you've gone to a competition and they have special waypoints, you could have them all installed and just select which one you want to use. If you want to delete files, and for instance, I was flying Aston down and no longer need those waypoints, I can just swipe here and you can now see it, you can just delete them. Airspace files are very much the same. You go into Airspace and you can see as default, the SeeYou database is enabled. Now, technically this is easier because the Oudie, whenever it gets an internet connection, checks the SeeYou database, see if there's any updates on the airspace files that they have, and then if there is an update, it downloads it, installs it in the background. I don't like doing this because I don't know when the updates are happening, I don't know what the airspace file is, I want to know exactly what I'm flying with, so I disable this and I fly with custom airspace files. And down here you can see I already had one installed from Aston down. I can now add airspace file. Here's the one we downloaded earlier, and make sure that the other ones are deactivated. And now if we go onto the map page, give it a second to load, and you can see there's the airspace file, and that box is flight level 25, this box is level 35, that box is level 45. All very simple, all very easy. Now with the airspace and the waypoint files installed, we can start looking at planning tasks, and there has been a task sheet here the entire time. That's going to have to wait for the next episode. Make sure you like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. Leave us a comment below if there's something specific you need help with on your Oudie. And if you want to become a better pilot, we have a whole set of courses from DDL on our Patreon for you to check out. See you next time.